about Ned Schmidt, the Value View Gold Report, the Agri-Food Value View. Ned, welcome back, and you're a Bitcoin non-owner.
I'm sorry, Kerry. I just don't own one. I just prefer being poor in the future.
Yeah, but now's your chance.
I'll have what I have.
But now is your chance. You're missing out. Aren't you suffering from FOMO?
I've missed out so many times on the hot thing that would have made me rich before they move on to something else that's going to make me rich. But it seems like every cycle we have to go through this, at least for sure in the last 25 years.
Oh, yeah.
And when you've got so much liquidity in the system put there by the Federal Reserve, eventually you spark speculative booms. I don't know why they can't understand that, I mean, it's like they keep doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome.
Isn't that the definition of insanity?
Done it again.
Right?
They've done it again. And the most dangerous entity ever built was a central bank. I mean, as soon as we left real money, the world just got worse. I mean, there were no depressions and no recessions, no great financial collapses of 2007 before we had the Federal Reserve. We had some bad periods when liquidity dried up, but they just made it worse, the amplitude. And I'll tell you, Kerry, actually, early last year, one of the Fed banks actually published an article from one of their economists that said they made things worse. But they don't pay any attention to it. And gold and silver, the valuation on gold relative to the S&P 500, that ratio got below 0.5 recently, which it had not seen since 2007, when the average price was about 600. And gold went on to triple from there.
Man.
And what's happened now is the valuation is so stretched, the undervaluation of gold of the S&P 500, that as the stock market is going up, it's pulling gold up. I mean, we had the low on December 12th, just a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
That gave us the second year in a row with a higher low. The only trend line you can draw on gold that makes any sense is one that's upsloping.
Mm.
And gold is poised there. I know the entire world does not believe that the stock market's ever going to crack again, and it's going to go up 0.5% a day the rest of everyone's life. And they're going to all be millionaires on Bitcoins. But the world has a way of that not happening. and gold right now is like it was in 2007, just before the financial world come apart.
Mm.
And the negativism on metals, it is reaching an extreme. One of the questions to ask, are the large funds going to go net short silver? If you look at a chart of the net long position of large speculators, you get that data from the Commitment of Traders report each week from the CFTC. Now, most of the time, that's the most useless report in the world. I mean, every week people comb it trying to get rich off of it, and you don't. But in the large speculators have been, on average, and averages are bad numbers, net long about 70,000 ounces of silver.
Right.
In the last 2 weeks, that position dropped by 60,000. In other words, they went from net long 70,000 to net long in the last report of 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
The pessimism on that metal and gold is reaching an extreme. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 2 reports that they show a net short position in silver. If they do, it's time, as they used to say 7 years ago, back up the pick-em-up trucks, because a net short position in large speculators is an extreme in emotion that we have. I don't remember ever seeing it.
That they've given up, basically, right?
Right, and it's going to crash. It's going in their minds, in the minds of these juvenile traders, silver should go to zero because you don't need it anymore. Everybody's going to use a cryptocurrency.
You mean they aren't?
That's nonsense.
They're not going to? You're sure about that? You're sure about this, Ned?
Terry, you've been around long enough. You remember what people were saying when silver went above $40. Mm-hmm. This is the new era. Silver is going to be the money.
I believed it too. I was hooked on the bubble, and it's very powerful. You get these dopamine receptors in your brain and the pleasure center, and once it gets started with a bubble, it's really hard to ever get off. And I've been sucked into it a few times, but a couple of times I've actually resisted the temptation and sold when I shouldn't have, and was the only one left standing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't worry about mistakes made by sold something too early. Never, ever. I don't like to sell something and take a loss. That's what hurts.
Especially when you were up, when you were ahead, and then you go and you take a loss, and that's like you kick yourself for years over that. Trust me, I have been. The dot-com boom. I was up so much, and I became a net loser.
Well, the one that I always remember is a guy I worked with many decades ago. He caught one of these runs in sugar.
Oh.
And he was pyramiding sugar contracts.
Oh,
and
my God.
He was winning beyond his wildest imagination. So one Monday morning, he goes upstairs to visit his broker to check on his account, and there's a sign on the door. Closed forever. The brokerage firm went bankrupt over the weekend.
Oh,
that's what people are facing here in these cryptocurrencies. These companies are going to disappear. You got to remember, they're just four guys in the basement of one of their mother's houses and some computers. This is not the research center at Apple.
Yeah, well, I have a friend. He had Bitcoin in a Russian exchange, and one day the government just shut down the exchange. And guess what happened to his Bitcoin? Nobody knows.
Still not rich.
I think it's probably in Putin's personal wallet now. You think Putin's got a wallet?
I was dog sitting a couple of weeks ago for my daughter, and I turned on Netflix. And they have a movie on Netflix called Gold.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Have you seen that?
Yes, yeah. Yep.
It's the story of that gold mine in Indonesia.
Yeah, that was the Briex, right? Briex?
That's it. I couldn't remember it. And I think people, if you're sitting here saying, why shouldn't I put my money in Bitcoin or some other crackpot scheme? Go watch that movie.
Oh, it was a great movie. It was really good. The guy is in like Las Vegas or Reno or someplace, and it was a really good movie. Good movie. So
I think people, just based on the euphoria in the stock market, you need to own some gold, because we're in a classic buy on the news, sell on the rumor kind of story here with tax cuts in the United States. And it's just time to wind down some risk in your portfolio.
Yeah. How good are these tax cuts really, Ned?
I think it's a wonderful tax cut. It's attacking the problem that needs to be attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And that's investing in American companies has been a loser's game.
Yeah.
You keep your money in Ireland. The whole thought that people would rather have their money in Ireland than in the United States just is mind-boggling. And it does correct that. And the other thing it does, we have, of course, the downside of this tax cut, the only downside I see, is the explosion of the deficit.
Yes.
And that, I think the deficit of the United States is going to become an issue again, because that's one of the strategies of the Republicans. They want to attack taxes, and then when it balloons the deficit, they use it to attack government spending. Mm-hmm. So that's in there. The secondary and tertiary impacts of this tax cut, the pressure that's going to be applied in high tax states is going to be incredible when those people pay their taxes next year. What do you mean you want me to give you a donation? Yeah. I just had to pay $60,000 more in taxes this year.
Oh, forget it. It's a disaster. I was writing something about it, but I didn't quite get to the bottom of it yet. But this is going to lead to another unintended consequence. If somebody feels like they got to stay in New York, say, or California, all right, then if he's a lawyer working for a firm, it's going to create a whole group of entrepreneurs. You know how many people, Ned, are making $500,000 a year and living check to check, paycheck to paycheck in New York, and it's only because of the deductibility of state and local taxes that they're able to subsist?
Probably more than I ever imagined.
Tens of thousands of people here, trust me on this, living in the suburbs of Westchester County and in Long Island and other high dollar areas. $500,000 sounds like an incredible amount of money, except when New York and the feds are taking combined between the two of them. If you live in New York City, it's 50%. If you live outside New York City, it's only about 47%. So that deductibility, the deductibility of the state and local income taxes and the real estate taxes, that could save people upwards of $35,000 a year, $50,000 on their federal income tax. I mean, that is an enormous amount of money, Ned. And these people are really, they're lawyers, they're accountants, they're other professionals, doctors, and they're really taking it taking it on the chin to be nice about where they're really taking it.
I'm sorry, I heard Nancy Pelosi complaining, and if people in California are looking for sympathy, I can tell them where in the dictionary they can find it.
I think it comes between the S word and syphilis, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Oh, okay. I was afraid to say.
We are a family show.
You keep telling me this is a family show, so I do try and behave myself.
That's pretty funny when you think about it. But yes, it's shocking. Yeah, it's shocking that they pulled this off. It's shocking that these poor rich people have no idea what's coming at them. The supposed rich, $500,000 in New York, you're pretty much middle class. So,
Well, move to Texas.
Yeah. I don't think
we don't want you. We don't want you here in Florida. But please move to Texas.
No, definitely not. And they'll be blaming the Republicans when in reality it's their own state they should be blaming, right? For being
That's
so
right.
poorly
It's
run.
not the Republicans' fault that the tax rate in Connecticut is what it is, and General Electric was forced to move out.
Yeah,
because of taxes.
And Aetna moved out also. Aetna had been there over 100 years. So how does that work? Not real smart. No, they're not real smart. But this is what you expect from politicians, especially in blue states. But, when you look at the federal, the state tax rates, California is like the highest. They go up to 13%. New York is like relatively low. It's like 7 or 8% if you make $1 million or more. New Jersey is really high. Connecticut is ridiculously high. Massachusetts, you just look at these state tax brackets and you can't believe it. So anyway, so what's with gold here? We going to see a run up here? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Like I said, I had been looking for the bottom last week on the 12th to the 14th. On the 12th, it hit 1236,
right,
and promptly reversed itself. So there was an important reversal on the 12th. Yeah, I think we've seen the low. And the gold stocks, the selling in them should be over also. So we should see a rally from here on, at least through into January, in gold, and in particular the gold stocks, because there can't be anybody left to sell gold stocks.
Yeah, you would think.
I think they took the last gold stock investor out and shot him last week. He's just gone.
I think he pulled the trigger. I think he gladly pulled the trigger. Is what I think here.
Trigger himself.
Yeah, he put himself out of his misery. But man, and silver's once this whole thing turns, silver is going to be where it's at, huh?
Silver, I'm looking for that position in the speculators, large ones. If they get it net short, someday they got to recover.
Yeah,
they got to cover their sales.
Right.
And that level of pessimism, I don't know that we've ever had that level of pessimism in silver as we're building up to. And so,
really,
and despite all that, the low on silver still hasn't been touched. The December 2015 low is still the low on silver. And so the silver itself as a broader uptrend. Not a very happy one, but it's there.
Let's see. Interesting. So it'll take time for it to catch gold, but then eventually it'll probably pass it, right? Like it always does, the volatility factor.
Right. Oh, right. It's silver is still got a high beta relative to gold, which means because of the price at $16, more people are going to buy silver than they're going to buy gold. So that's what always does it.
Yeah.
It's the poor man's gold.
Poor man's gold. Absolutely. Hey, so what about our ag sector there, commodities? What are you looking at here? You're always ahead of the trend.
Agri-commodities have been strong since October of 2016 when they bottomed. And, 2017, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 2016. Anyhow, they were up about 14% as a group from last year. And what we're looking at now is ethanol and corn. Ethanol is having a rebirth. We produced 26 billion gallons of it around the world last year. U.S. produced most of that. On a barrel basis, where U.S. is producing about 1,000,001 barrels a day. Mm-hmm. China has decided that ethanol is the immediate solution to their air pollution problems. Right now, China's ethanol consumption is 2% of their vehicle fuel total. Mm. They want it to go to 10%, which means China wants to increase its consumption of ethanol by 5 times. Mm. And the only viable way to produce it, a lot of it, is with corn. And in the last WASDE, that's the Worldwide Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimate from the USDA, the only piece of news in there was that they raised their estimate of how much corn we're going to use in ethanol this year by 50 million bushel. That's how strong they see the market in. Hmm. China's corn prices are twice ours. Corn in China sells for well over $6 a bushel. In the United States is $3 a bushel. And President Xi has an agricultural background. And he's finally decided it makes no sense to buy corn in China at twice the price he can buy it in Iowa, put it in an elevator or storage, and let it rot because their storage is so bad. Mm-hmm. So they've cut the government program to pay farmers less for their corn. And so Chinese corn production has collapsed.
Going down, right.
It's at a 5-year low. There are only 2 places in the world you can buy a lot of corn. That's in the United States and in Brazil.
Right.
And Brazil has some serious problems. The farmers aren't making any money. And the big companies like Monsanto and Bayer are saying they're seeing their Brazilian corn business for seeds and fertilizers and crop enhancement nutrients off 20 to 30% this year. So we're going to see a smaller crop in Brazil, probably a smaller crop in the United States. So I look for corn prices. They finally put in a bottom about 3 months ago to continue to rise. So one of the interesting plays next year will be ethanol and corn, and that brings you to Archer Daniels, ADM, which has a big ethanol business. They also own 23% of Wilmar International, which is the big palm oil company, biggest oil seed crusher in China. They're the biggest seller of palm oil into China. And I know a lot of your listeners say, what do I care about palm oil? Palm oil is the #1 vegetable oil in the world.
Right.
So outside the United States, outside the EU, palm oil is what they use. And the other one to take a look at is BG. It has been so badly managed for so many years. It seems to be an increasing probability of Glencore making a move on them. Glencore has a standstill agreement with them And I think the only thing that's for is so the management of Bunge, BG, can find out if they're going to have a job if they agree to the deal.
Yeah.
And so I still think that's a possibility. One small company I've liked for a long time is Where Food Comes From, WFCF. If you see a package of meat in the grocery store and it says this meat was born in the United States and raised in the United States, or anything like that, WFCF is the company that verifies that happens. That's what happened. If you've ever seen a picture of a cow with a tag in its ear,
right,
they produce those tags, and they're the one that tracks where the cow's at. President Trump struck a new deal with President Xi to import beef into China, our beef into China, which hadn't been done in 13 years.
Right.
One of the requirements is that the packaging for the Chinese consumers has on it where that cow was raised, produced and raised. WFCF is the company that does that.
That's them. So they're just a tracking like software company. It's like, so when the kid says, "Daddy, where does the meat come from?" then he could just open up his computer or his tablet and say, "Scan the tag," and here it is, right?
Right. And there are like restaurants in New York City that has that little, what is it, a QR code?
Yeah, QR code.
On their menus, on their menus.
Right.
And you can put the smartphone on the menu, it'll tell you where your steak came from. And they do some other things like American certified flowers. If you buy flowers from somebody, and the florist will claim that these are certified American grown flowers.
Right.
They're the ones that verify that. If you go into a pet store and it's the puppy is certified humanely born and raised, this is the company that verifies your puppy really was loved. So it's an interesting company. But, one of the things, Kerry, is looking at this is the United States is being left behind in so many things. I mean, we have squandered billions of dollars on useless social networking sites, while China now has more supercomputers than the U.S. But the largest beef company is JBS in Brazil, largest beef exporter in the world.
Right.
BRFS, the largest Chinese exporter, is in Brazil. Wilmar, which I just talked about, is based in Singapore. WH Global, which is the largest pork company in the world, the pork butcher to China trades in Hong Kong and in Beijing. We're slowly being left out of the world for tomorrow, Kerry.
It certainly would appear that way. It certainly would. Well, so what's the answer?
So maybe the tax bill will help. I think it'll help. It's not going to solve the changing fortunes of two large countries.
Yeah. I don't doubt that. So, well, you never know what's going to happen. That's one thing I've learned. You think you might know, it seems obvious, and yet when it happens, everyone's surprised, right?
Right.